Think gadget reviews, news, and all about it.
Kazam Tornado 348 Review. The Tornado 348 is alarmingly slim, and it's not bad looking either. We think it's a great flag bearer for the future in some respects. As phones get bigger, they need to get slimmer to make sure we can hold them without getting bionic fingertips surgically attached. And we don't think a 0.5-inch larger phone is worth going all Blade Runner over. But is this a phone you should actually buy, or more of a strong proof of concept? And what's been sacrificed in the name of ultra-slimness? All are questions that need answering. Measuring the waist. But first, just exactly how slim is the Kazam Tornado 348? Why, it's 5.15 millimeters thick minus 1.75 millimeters thinner than an iPhone 6. Or 25% thinner, if we want to make it sound more dramatic. It's skinny and then some, but like the last self-consciously super slim phone we tried, the Oppo R5, it makes sure you notice every one of those tenths of a millimeter. Its design is similar to that of the iPhone 5S, with a rectangular shape that gives the Kazam Tornado 348 an angular rather than smooth feel. If the Tornado 348 was a creature, you'd definitely be able to see ribs poking out its sides. It's not just notable for its slimness, but it's lightweight too. The Tornado 348 is just 95 grams, making it 25 lighter than an iPhone 6. If we just blew your mind, we apologize for the mess. The Tornado 348 has a pretty striking look to boot. Our white version has bronze gold aluminium on the sides and glassy-looking surfaces on the front and back. The black version uses silver on its sides for a similar two-tone effect. Hidden plastic. It looks expensive and feels very well made, too. Both front and back sides are covered with Gorilla Glass 3, which is fairly scratch-resistant and helps make the phone feel expensive, if a little fragile. Kazam has also put a bunch of little insurance measures in place. The company will replace the front screen for free if you smash it in the first year, and a screen protector and rubbery case come in the box, letting you avoid just about all damage with the unfortunate side effect of ruining the Tornado 348's USP. But here's the thing, the phone doesn't really need to be this thin. A little subtle curvature would actually improve the phone's ergonomics, and at times the light glassy design does make the Tornado 348 feel very precarious. When taking photos one-handed, it feels as though a light breeze could whisk the phone from your hand, bounce it off a drain cover and send it, screen smashed, headfirst into a pile of dog mess in a calamitous sequence that'd impress Rube Goldberg. Sometimes having a bit of weight and substance to a phone isn't a bad thing. We're also not too happy about the lack of a microSD slot, which we're also going to presume is a result of the limited chassis space. The 16 GB of storage leaves you with just under 10 GB to actually use, fine for some but not remotely enough if you want to use the Tornado 348 as a place to store all your music. Yes, we like the Kazam Tornado 348 design well enough, just don't expect alarming revelations in dropping down from using a 8mm thick phone to a 5mm one. OLED whoa. More serious issues arise as we look at the screen. The Kazam Tornado 348 has a 4.8-inch 1280 by 720 pixel AMOLED screen. At this price we'd really like to see a 1080p screen, but not because we're simply greedy for pixels. 720p 4.5-inch screens can look great, but this one doesn't. Due to the way the Tornado's AMOLED display works, its pixels actually share the little RGB elements that make up each little dot of pure white, and the result is that it looks weirdly fizzy next to the 720p screen of the 140-pound Moto G. We find it pretty obvious and distracting in the Kazam Tornado 348, enough to turn the OLED screen from a pro into a con. There are also a few other oddities in the display. Colors are very oversaturated, making everything look that little bit tweaked and unnatural. It also seems to do some very odd things with motion. When watching movies, there's a frame interpolation effect that almost makes people look as if they have been sped up. You'll often see this in higher-end TVs as a way to improve motion handling, but we've always found it looks kinda weird. This screen is a dead ringer for the one we saw in the Samsung Galaxy S3 back in 2012, but things have moved on a little since then and it's too easy to notice its shortcomings now. We've been so spoiled by screens such as the LG G3's QHD1. Conversely, shop around and the LG G3 can be yours for not a huge amount more than the Tornado. OLED isn't without benefits, though. The Kazam Tornado 348 offers great black depth and contrast. That should be perfect for movies, but it's spoiled a bit by the fizziness, color saturation and motion weirdness issues. As is to be expected of a phone thinner than a Rivata, the speaker doesn't help the Kazam Tornado 348's chances of scoring a job as a mini cinema either. It has a single speaker on the back, and while it avoids sounding distorted, it is very trebly and thin. As with previous Kazam phones we've seen, the software strategy seems to be to keep everything pretty close to standard Android. The phone does have a custom interface, but aside from a few tweaks you could easily mistake it for vanilla software. So, what are the tweaks? The Kazam Tornado 348 lets you add folders in the apps menu, has a new look settings menu and a few added features such as custom smart gestures. These let you do things like take the phone out of sleep with 2 taps, or launch specific apps from standby by drawing a specific object on the touch screen. It's not a bad approach to customization, but we have noticed a few slow or glitchy moments in the custom areas, especially the settings menu. While the interface may look like standard Android, it's not quite as well optimized. One interesting touch is the Amazon Mayday-like Kazam Rescue app. It doesn't video call Kazam customer services, you have to use an actual phone number to get hold of them, but it does allow them to remote access your phone, with your permission, to diagnose problems or simply help you get set up. It's a neat feature and something that more and more gadget makers are going to be including in the future, but we suspect it will only be a deal maker for a small and specific set of people. It's not like there isn't enough power to go around. The Kazam Tornado 348 has an octa-core MediaTek MT6592 CPU with 1 GB of RAM, and while MediaTek chips aren't quite as efficient or popular as their Qualcomm alternatives, the Snapdragon 800 of the Nexus 5 is better. There's a good amount of power on tap here. As long as you make sure all 8 cores are prepped to fire up when needed, the Kazam Tornado 348's gaming performance is very good. It uses the Mali 450 GPU, which sits roughly between the power on tap in the Motorola Moto G and Nexus 5. In other words, it's good, but don't let those 8 cores go to your head too much. It also doesn't have 4 true high-power cores, as other 8-core CPUs do. It's not a bad setup for efficiency, though. 4 of the cores can be effectively switched off to save battery life, and that helps avoid the dismal battery life we feared when seeing a phone as slim as the Kazam Tornado 348. It has a 2050 mAh battery. Similar to the Motorola Moto G. With normal use you'll get a solid day and change out of a charge, and we got a solid 10 hours of video playback before the phone gave up. While you'll get better out of the rival Honor 6, another young upstart out to attack the big boys, it's better than we expected from such a slim phone. An extra serving of selfies. The cameras aren't too shabby either. You get an 8-megapixel sensor with LED flash on the back and a 5-megapixel selfie cam on the front.